Good evening. Righting a historic wrong or kneeling at the altar of political correctness?
After more than 4 decades at the Tennessee Capitol, the bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest is moved to a new home at the State Museum. News Channel 5 was at the protests when the bust was installed back in 1978 and also there this morning when it was removed. 3 different commissions voted to move the statue, but not everyone agrees with the decision. Speaker Cameron Sexton compared the move to communism, and Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally said in part, quote, "The left-wing activists who are pushing an anti-American, anti-history agenda here in Tennessee and across the nation will not stop with Nathan Bedford Forrest. The woke mob means ultimately to uproot and discard not just Southern symbols, but American heroes in history as well." McNally and Sexton were the only 2 members of the commission to vote against moving the bust yesterday, and for many it marks a new beginning on Capitol Hill. News Channel 5's Kyle Horan takes us inside the removal process and what's next for the controversial bust.
Nathan Bedford Forrest, one of the state's most controversial figures. The bust that used to sit at the state capitol now sits at its new home, just a day after a commission voted to have it gone. Here's what taking down an estimated 3,000-pound statue looks like. Chains and straps were wrapped around the bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest. Crews were careful in their endeavor, but this is not as simple as it looks. For many, the bust is symbolic of a time where racism was a part of everyday life, a part of Tennessee's legacy of slave trading, of the Civil War and the Confederacy, of the KKK, of which Forrest was an early leader.
When you are in protest, you don't know if you're going to achieve your goal. You just know you have to do the fight.
Outside of the Capitol, as 3 busts were all carted through a service store, several protesters gathered. Reverend VENITA Lewis was one of them.
This is the end of a journey of standing to say this statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest bust need to be removed. Can you imagine what Black legislators have had to try to deal with when they come in and this bus is bleeding and breathing down their backs?
Lewis says this is a victory for all protesters in the 4 decades since the controversial figure was placed in the Capitol. To them, it is a symbol of hate removed. Now it will be put on display in the State Museum instead. Museum Executive Director Ashley Howe says there's already quite a bit of context from Forrest's life written inside of the museum.
He is fully interpreted, and so I encourage people when they do come to the State Museum to also spend time in our permanent space to be able to engage with that content.
A permanent location for a bust that's been the center of conflict for many years. Kyle Horan, News Channel 5.
Thanks, Kyle. Taking a deep look now at the history of the figure, calls for the removal started escalating back in 2015 after the mass shooting in Charleston. After a failed vote in 2017, the final push to remove the bust started back up in 2019 with a petition. Over the past year, 3 different commissions voted to move the Forrest bust to the Tennessee State Museum. Now, if you'd like to see the bust and learn more about Nathan Bedford Forrest, the museum exhibit will open on Tuesday.